welcome to Home Farm. Today I'm going to be showing you how we've dressed the garlands over our fireplaces and doorway this year for Christmas in our Victorian farmhouse. So this is the main fireplace in our Victorian farmhouse, and as you can see it's quite big and chunky, so I knew I wanted a garland that was really going to be able to take the weight of this fireplace and also be quite heavy in the feel of it. So I had two garlands and I knew that neither of them were full enough for my liking, so I wanted to combine them. So I laid them on the floor straight in a parallel line, and then I took quite a bit of time sitting on the floor weaving them together. Basically just doing this and making sure that all the branches were overlapping and interweaving so that A, it held it together and was nice and stable, and also it gave it a really good fullness. The nice thing about when you're using an artificial garland is they're normally quite stiff and the branches have got some kind of wire in them already, so I really didn't need to wire in too much. I wired the center and I wired the ends, and that was it. And I just used the branches and the stiffness of the branches to hold it together. So then I wanted to make sure that the garland was lit. So I purchased some LED copper lights, and I just took that copper wire and sat on the floor and just weaved it all the way through the branches and put the battery. I did wire in the battery pack at the end of the garland, so I always know exactly where it is, and thankfully the copper lights that I purchased come with a remote control, so really easy to operate. I knew I wanted a bow in the center, so I made this bow by hand separately, wired it together, and so that I can easily attach it with the wire onto the garland, and next year I can just unwire it at the back, still have the bow intact, and be able to use that for any other projects that I have. I then hung and mounted the garland. I did try and use command hooks that are damage free, but they just weren't sticking to the wood fire. We've got a big chunky piece of oak behind here that goes across the full length, and it just wasn't sticking. So now I've actually just put in some very tiny tack nails, and I just hooked on some wire onto the tack nails and then strung it onto the garland, and that's how it's in place. I knew that I was not going to be using any heavy decorations. I knew everything that I was going to be using in this garland was going to be really lightweight, so I really didn't need to add anything else there once it was on the floor, and then I hooked it onto the nails. There was nothing else on the garland, it was completely bare. So then I took my feathers. I had a packet of peacock feathers that a very dear friend of ours had given to us about 20 years ago. She gave me a packet of peacock feathers because I was really into table settings and decorating tables for dinner parties at the time. So she gave me a beautiful pack of peacock feathers, which I have kept. And a couple of years ago, a neighbour of ours came and had actually given me some pheasant feathers, local pheasant feathers. So they're from the area, and again I just decided that I was going to use a combination of the peacock and the pheasant feathers together this year to give it a really nice dramatic country look. I really enjoy working with feathers for the simple reason that I don't need to glue them, I don't need to wire them, I can just literally pop them in. All of these feathers up here are loose, so I just took the feathers and I just popped them straight in to the garland, and they just stay in place just like any flower arrangement that you might be doing. You've just got to find that sweet spot, and once you found it, it'll hold itself in place. This summer I was in our field and noticed that we had some really interesting seed pods and grasses and wildflowers that had all started to die back, and I took the opportunity to go down there and snip them all and bring them up, tie them in bunches and dry them. And so I've decided to use them here in the garland as an additional filler, but also it's kind of actually has that reminiscence of using it as a pick really. But it gives us a really nice kind of gold natural colour and tone, and it's quite filling, and it's giving you a lot more texture in the garland, which I think is really lovely. Then to really play up the feather theme that I had going on this year, I bought a couple of these beautiful little silk and feather clip-on birds, and they simply just have a little silver clip at the back, and you can just clip them on wherever you want onto the garland, and again you don't have to worry about glue or additional wiring in. These little white berries, I did actually wire those in because they are a little bit tricky and they can fall out quite easily. So I have wired in all of the little white berries, and I think that they really add a nice touch of white to the garland. And then for some little decorations that were kind of Nordic inspired, I just handmade these last month. It was some dry clay that you can get on Amazon. You can just buy a pack of air dry clay and you just roll it out. I used some cookie cutters to cut out the different shapes that I wanted, and then I had a few vintage stamps, embossing stamps, and I went ahead and embossed them all with different shapes, and then put a hole through and strung them with some jute, and then I just literally hooked them on all the way down the garland. So I knew that I wanted to use the garland in a straight style and not swag it, but I still wanted to have anchor points visually so that you would have somewhere to go. So points of interest was my centerpiece, which worked again with the center of the fireplace. And then because we have these end brick pillars that are quite chunky, I needed something that was going to be able to carry the weight of that visually. So I kind of made this kind of bigger cluster of feathers and decorations at the end of the garland on each side. It just creates a feeling of symmetry and balance. So with the bigger display of feathers and dried floral decoration here, I also wanted to bring a bit of decor downwards as well to work with the height of this pillar. So I found these two wired hearts that we actually had from our wedding. Don't ask me how long ago, it was a very long time ago. And I thought, okay, I'll string those up with a bit of ribbon, and I'll add a touch of this beautiful tartan ribbon to each of those. And luckily I had two of them, and so I put one at this side and one at that side, and I think it just finishes off the garland really beautifully, and it's something sentimental to us to look at. I also think that what's so nice about this blue and green tartan is it just really picks up on those colours that we had going on with the peacock feathers and these little clip-on birds. So we've really got a nice theme going on here of the blues, the greens and the browns, and I think that overall it really works well, and the white just kind of tends to break it up and be a bit of an accent colour. So now we're in the kitchen diner, and this fireplace backs onto the other fireplace we were just standing at, so they go back to back with each other, and they use the same chimney breast. So we have a little bookshelving unit here, and we have this lovely vintage bird cage, and we keep fairy lights in it all year round. So before I even started, I knew I needed to balance the lighting around the fireplace before I actually dressed the middle fireplace with the garland. So I added this swag down this little cupboard that we keep our alcohol in, and put a bow on and this beautiful glass decoration of the Titanic, and put some fairy lights through so that when you come into the room you immediately have a bit of symmetry with regards to lighting. And I also added some copper wire remote control lights. I think these are called firework LED lights, and they're really cool because they're on this kind of copper wire, and you can move them around and do cool things with them. Put them into bunches or have it really spread out, and I added that to the center again to give us some anchor points of light when you're looking at the whole room cohesively. So I had two different garlands that I was going to use for this fireplace. One was like an artificial cypress. It was quite a flat leaf style garland, which you can see here with some berries on it, and the other garland was this more spruce or fir garland with the flocking on it. So again, I just lay them flat on the floor, parallel to each other, and just gently interwove them with each other and weave them through. So I simply widen the battery pack at the end of the garland here, so I know it's really easy to access, and if I have to change the batteries, I can without making too much disruption to the rest of the garland. The decoration I kept the same. I had plenty of feathers left over to be able to dress this garland as well with the peacock and pheasant feathers. So I utilised them here, and I kept the exact same dry flowers that I had. The only difference I did with this garland was I did wired some cinnamon sticks together, and then I covered the wire with a bit of jute string, and I popped those in, and also some little cones along the way just to pick up that white flocking design. So I don't actually own a glue gun. I've been very tempted to purchase one in the past a few times, when the thought of just being able to hot glue something straight into place and know that it's going to stay there is very, very tempting. but I haven't done it so far, and I'm really glad, because just taking that bit of extra time to wire in or string things, and I know that sometimes it can be fiddly and you have to have a lot of patience, but to be able to do that and know that at the end of the year I can strip this garland back, I can simply remove all of these things and have a clean bare garland, and next year I can do a completely different style, makes Christmas decorating so much more sustainable. So this is our hallway and our main entrance area, and the door is directly behind the camera, and then you walk in to here and you go left to the kitchen and right to the rest of the house. And so I have this as our back door to our garden, our back garden, and this is the first time that I actually decided that I was gonna put a garland across the top doorway, just to give you an immediate kind of focal point. When you walked into the house, you immediately saw something festive, and it just brightened up this space and made it feel a little bit more fairy and twinkly lights in the evening. I also completely forgot that I actually do have another garland. It's here on our bench. This is our main seating bench in the hallway where we put our welly boots on and get ready when we're going out. And this is a really old church pew that the previous owners had salvaged and put in. And so there is a bit of a gap between here and the brickwork, and luckily there is a little bit of a shelf there that's been kind of built in behind here. So it gave me something to be able to sit the garland on. So I took two garlands. One is like a fir garland, like a blue spruce kind of thing, and the other one is a mistletoe. Intertwined them together very, very loosely, didn't spend too much time on it, put some fairy lights through, and then literally whatever dried flowers and branches I had left over, I just came in and popped all of these dried foliages in, and I added some cones to really make it feel a little bit festive, so when you're sitting here putting your boots on, you've got something to look at. I'm a big fan of decorations that you can use for all different types of events and seasons. And one of the decorations that I really get tons of use out of is things like this, the wooden star. We bought a packet of these wooden stars with a bit of chalk paint on them from a market at least 10 years ago. And Mars made me some last year. He simply just got a free wooden pallet. You can get pallets in the UK from various places for free, and he just pulled the wooden pallet to pieces, took the boards and just randomly cut with the jigsaw out some star shapes for me, and I just applied a bit of chalk paint and I've got them sprinkled all over the house. They're really handy because you can use them at birthdays, and they're really great for Christmas. So thankfully the command hooks did work over the door. I think it's because it's stuck on PVC, and I'm really pleased to say that they've stayed in place thus far. So above the door I've used 5 command hooks. I've used one as my center point. Please excuse the fact that the glass door does need a wash. And then I've used 2 here, 1 on each side, and then 2 at the end, 1 on each end. So 5 in total, and it's holding it pretty well. So again, I've intertwined 2 garlands. One is the spiky kind of flocked garland, and that is a really old 10+ year old garland that we had. And the other one is a slightly newer garland. This one, I think it was sold as eucalyptus. I'm not sure if it does really look like eucalyptus or just a very leafy garland, and that's kind of got this very soft kind of sage color to it. What I like about it is that the older garland, as you can see here, really doesn't have any thickness or fullness to it whatsoever. And so counteracting that or counterbalancing that with this very thick leaf garland really helped kind of build up the density and give us a really nice full look. Then I just got my dried limes. Again, these were purchased at a bag of them. They're loose, were purchased at a Christmas market years and years ago. And I took the dried limes, I pushed some wire through, it was just paddle wire through them, and secured them onto the garland with the wire. I found that the easiest way to do that is to give yourself a bit of extra length on the wire. So for example, you've got your line and then you thread through the wire and then twist it, but twist it a lot. So give yourself about 2 or 3 centimeters of twist, and then you'll have your tail ends, which your tail ends connect to that. What that does is that gives you a little bit of depth, so that when you put the limes on, they're not completely, really flat against the garland, they're kind of protruding a bit, and that gives you the flexibility to really maneuver your lime into the different position that you might want it and allow it to kind of really hang. For a point of reference, this door width is about 1 meter of an archway wide. So I think it's a 1200, so a 1.2 meters long garland. That's what gives you the little bit of extra drop at the ends. And for that, I've used about 8 to 10 dried limes. I've put in quite a lot of cones, and I've used some white berries. And then I've just put in some dried flowers, and I did actually have some dried eucalyptus from the garden that I was able to use as well. I'd love to hear what you've done to your garlands this year, so please leave a comment below and let us know what colours you used, what themes you went with, and how you made your garlands extra special this year. So I hope this video has given you some creative inspiration and ideas on what you can do with your garlands next year. And please stay tuned, we'll have some more videos coming. There's a video coming about how I decorated the Christmas trees, how I did the wreaths this year, and I think we'll also have some top tips on Christmas decorating and garlands coming, so please subscribe and ring the bell. We really hope to see you on our next video. Thank you very much for watching, and we wish you all a wonderful holiday.